Hello, everyone. Welcome to another CrowdLinker Fireside Chat. I'm Aram Melkoumov, the host. Thanks for tuning in. On the show, I'm interviewing well-known product and innovation leaders who are working on big industry disruptive problems from within their organizations. The guests that we have on our show have been in the trenches and have lots of practical advice to share about building quality digital products, staying agile, and most importantly, fostering an innovation mindset. This is season 2, episode number 10, and I'm here with Navya Rahani Gupta to chat about her journey through COVID, becoming an adaptable product leader, working in her different industry experience, building products in vertical SaaS companies, and defining what a CPO, Chief Product Officer, is and does. Navya is the Chief Product Officer at Peak.com. Right now, she's responsible for the scaling of the platform known as the Shopify for the $1 trillion experiences market. Peak helps consumers book fun activities such as boat rentals and cooking classes, and provides experience operators with powerful software tools to grow their businesses. Prior to Peak, she built new business lines at StyleSeat, the world's largest marketplace for beauty services that has fueled billions of dollars in beauty services. And she has also managed large-scale products at companies like Uber, Disney, and Goldman Sachs. She's a seasoned product executive who loves to build and grow products and high-performing teams. And she's an actively sought mentor for women and students to accelerate their careers in technology. So that's a great background. Thank you so much for joining us today, Navya. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Cool. So I'll start off with a introductory question. If you mind telling us a little bit about yourself, kind of what you're currently doing now at Peak, and also where you're based.
Yeah, so I'm based in San Francisco, foggy San Francisco, I should say. I live here with my 2 little kids. I think you did a good job covering my background. So the only thing I would add is I grew up in India in a family full of doctors. Everybody in my family is a doctor. We lived in a residential campus of doctors. But I took the non-conventional route of going towards technology. I became an engineer because I always knew that technology could change lives. I started programming when I was 15 years old, and that's what drew me to engineering. And very quickly in my engineering career, I found my love for product and never looked back. So through this whole career of product, as you mentioned, I've been in many different companies of different sizes, different verticals, and today I'm the CPO of Peak, and I'm responsible for product management, design, and product analytics at the company.
Okay, cool. Well, I'm really excited to go through some of our questions that we have here today. The first one I'm going to start off with is, as I mentioned, around your experience navigating through the whole COVID pandemic. As we all know, the pandemic impacted millions of businesses worldwide. But in your case specifically, or with Peak specifically, you guys went from potentially millions in revenue to zero, or a smaller amount when COVID first hit. Can you walk us through, that experience that you went through? What were you thinking as a business at the time, and as well as a product leader in terms of navigating through that crisis?
Yeah, so this is March 2020. Everybody calls that time unprecedented because it truly was. Our business was up and to the right. We're doing millions of dollars, and suddenly that week, where the world shut down, travel shut down, we saw our revenue drop to zero. Right, so it was. I've been through recessions in the past. I used to work on Wall Street, but this was truly unprecedented. So as a business, our focus was sustainability, right? And then as a product leader, my biggest focus was our customers. So as soon as this happened, I reached out to as many people as I can in our customer base. I picked up the phone, talked to our customers. My team did exactly that. I put a pause on all our roadmap initiatives because everything had to be thought through from the lens of the pandemic. And then based on these conversations, what I did was I broke out our roadmap into 3 different stages. The first one was survival. How do we help our customers survive the pandemic? What is everything that we can do to help our customers during that lockdown? The second was the recovery stage. So we knew that at some point the lockdown will be lifted, and we wanted to be best prepared to help our customers and even differentiate during the crisis. And then the third one was steady stage and new normal, and we're continuing to invest there. So on the first one, on the survival, what we did was we did a company level brainstorm. Everybody in our company is super customer centric, so we did a company level brainstorm to say what could product do to help our customers in this situation, and tons of great ideas came around here, specifically to help our operators retain their revenue, because they were getting inundated with phone calls with customers trying to cancel their tours. So in that period, we built, I think, like 10 features in 2 months. For example, when a customer calls to book, instead of canceling the booking, give them a store credit so that you're able to retain that revenue. So multiple things around the survival was our big focus. And then recovery, when things started to reopen, we wanted to arm our operators with ways to build confidence. So what are the ways that you can build confidence that the experiences are safe? So examples would be signing your waivers through an email so that you don't have to have that interaction, setting up kiosks, and so forth. And then on the new normal, the big focus has been around continuing to reduce customer anxiety and to double down on the surge in the travel that we're seeing, right? So an example would be contactless payments, but also adapting to the changing customer needs.
Mm-hmm. And so with what did you see happen in the business when you changed your roadmap? You became very dynamic and fluid in terms of what's happening in the market. I really love the fact that you're a very customer-centric organization. And so the fact that you really focus on your operators, because they're really being impacted with no growth. So I think my question is, with all the things that you adopted, did you rebound? Like, did you see a light at the end of the tunnel? Did revenue start going back up, or
Yes.
did you create like maybe new offerings that people could do without traveling?
Yeah. So this was, we started in March 2020, and by summer, what we saw was a few things happened. Our operators were able to pivot. Some of them were able to offer virtual experiences. So that was a new line of business that we helped them with. And then the other thing was we started to see the cities reopen and customers just getting tired of being at home and looking for safe experiences. So as a platform, we go across 40 different verticals, but we also have had a big focus around rentals. So our customers started to book boat rentals and do outdoor safe experiences like drive-through pumpkin patches, and our business just went up to the right again. We had our biggest summer ever as a company last year. So we're one of the very few travel companies that thrived during the pandemic. And obviously this year, with the recovery of travel, where the business has been doing exceptionally well.
Fantastic. That's great to hear. I always love these success stories. A lot of companies I've read about, came across, that didn't have that agility. So actually, good segue to my next question I have for you is around, how do you stay adaptive as a product leader? So like, what does that mean for you as a leader in your organization, being able to adapt to micro, macro factors, and how does that impact your decision making? Maybe within your team, maybe within your strategies, within your leadership team. What would you say is like some of the key attributes in order to be a successful, adaptable product leader?
Yeah. So I strongly believe that adaptability is a trait that differentiates a good product leader from a great product leader. And to me, the expectation for product leaders is, hey, you have to be super strategic, mission driven, but also you're required to know the details. You need to be able to ask the right questions to be able to uncover problems before they happen. You need to give autonomy to all your teams to be able to work independently, but still at the executive table represent their decisions. You need to be able to know the what, why, and how behind your team's decisions. So that, to me, is an important skill to have as a product leader. And to me, adaptability is the ability to maintain the right focus and the right horizon in every situation. And that's something that I look for when I'm hiring, and something that I consciously pay attention to in my day-to-day work as well.
And you mentioned horizons. So how do you foresee your product horizons out a quarter at a time?
Yeah. So I'd say that as product leaders, we're all problem solvers, and it's easy to get into the details, and the default stage is more of a zoomed in stage, and so you have to create room to zoom out, because as a natural default state, you'll be looking at the problems in hand. So the way I do that is I myself make time on my calendar for zoomed out activities, and I'm a big believer that the way you manage your time is going to dictate who you become. So I consciously make time to think about the strategic direction of the product, where our company is going, how product can play a big role on that, and define strategic initiatives for myself and for my team that are 2 quarters out, 3 quarters out, so that we're maintaining that forward-looking lens.
Mm-hmm. And how much time do you spend on a weekly basis between zoomed in conversations, so shorter term, versus zoom out? Longer term horizon?
Yeah, so I'd say at least a third of my time is on zoomed out strategic initiatives. A third is zoomed in, but driving alignment in the company across teams within the product team. And then a third is around people. So people management, hiring the team, and so forth. And
a question about hiring, because I always like asking this question: what do CPOs look for? What are some important attributes or traits that you look for in your product team when you're hiring them?
So I mentioned adaptability, and I specifically screen for that. And then the second one is a high threshold for crazy. As a startup, things are always evolving and changing. So I typically look into the craziest situations people have been into, because I believe that if you expose yourself to more and more challenges, it continues to expand your horizon for crazy and sets you up for success in the future.
Okay, cool. And talking about crazy and experience, I know you have a lot of experience in different industries. So the question the next kind of maybe set of questions I want to go through is, with your experience that you have working in different companies and different niches, Uber, Disney, which are more maybe finance or mobile games, transportation, beauty, I think that was your previous one. What are some of the similarities and some of the differences between being a product leader and building products in those markets?
Yeah. So for those who are not familiar with these names, in my whole career, I've built products for many different types of customers. So at Goldman, it was very much towards high net worth clients, people who invested more than 25 million in the company. At Disney, it was more towards mobile gaming enthusiasts, people who are Disney fans. At Uber, I built products for drivers, but also developers to create unique experiences around Uber. And for StyleSeat, I built products for stylists, and then also customers who are looking to book beauty experiences, and now in peak, travel operators and customers looking to book fun things to do. So very, very different types of companies. The differences, as you can see, the products had different product market fit, different customer market dynamics, different unique advantages that are specific to the company, and even different pace of innovations, because of the size of the companies that they were. In terms of similarities, the one common thing across all these companies is customer centricity. And I go back to that because I screen for that when I'm figuring out what problem to look for next, right? And the commonality here is customer centricity. And what does customer centricity mean? It's the aspect of the culture that's visible in terms of what people say and do. All these companies had narratives that revolve around the customer. Customers actually had a seat at the table. I used to work at a company where we would be sitting and having a conversation, and there would be a seat and for the customer, and we would say, what would the customer say? Our team our product team never writes a single piece of code until we have talked to customers. All these companies have, they hire for customer centricity. Their performance reviews and their compensation are all based around customer goals. So that's been the similarity across all these companies, which has made it a lot of fun. And that truly is the ability to operationalize customer empathy, because to me that sets the foundation for product strategy.
Very interesting. I love that aspect of customer centricity about having an actual physical seat. I'm going to use that in some of our material. With that being said, what advice would you give to our listeners who are, up and coming product leaders who are open to moving around into different verticals or into different niches, so that they're not just maybe pigeonholed in terms of like one industry that they're only working in, like in banking? What advice would you give them in terms of being able to move around into other realms of product?
Yeah. So the first thing I would say is do your homework and really, really convince yourself that you're passionate about that industry and the problems there, right? It's easy to say, I'm a generalist and I don't care which industry I'm going to be in, but that's going to become your life for a big part. So do your homework, understand the industry dynamics, understand the types of problems that are specific to the industry before you go all in. Once you've convinced yourself and you're actually there, the first 30 days in your job, talk less and listen more, right? Don't try to overgeneralize by thinking that you've seen that problem before in another industry or another company and you get it. Like really don't assume that you get it. Don't overgeneralize there. And I do that even now as a CPO. I spend every quarter, what I do is a listening tour, because I want to continue to reinforce my understanding of the market and my customers. So that's the second one, which is, listen. And then the third would be after, you've convinced yourself, you've done all the listening, you have to zoom out and you have to think about what are the problems in this industry, and then what are the learnings from other industries that you can bring in. And what I've seen is that people get that order wrong. They start to bring in ideas from other industry before really doing their listening. And to me, that doesn't set them up for success.
Is there any strategy you deploy? I mean, you mentioned a couple, like, coming in and listening, not trying to bring in your ideas and whatnot from your prior experiences, but is there some sort of like maybe first few weeks audit that you do as like a CPO coming into a new company? What do you look for? Like, what are those like maybe metrics that you analyze in order to see kind of where the business is at, or maybe with the leadership team? What kind of questions maybe do you ask the leadership team in terms of like, where do you see this business going? Where are you stuck? Where are you concerned, kind of thing?
Yeah, so, and this goes back to the point about convincing yourself, right? So how do you convince yourself as a CPO before you go into that industry? So I would say the biggest one is the growth potential of the company. How is it set up for success? So where is it now? And how is the and where does it want to get to, right? And having worked in many different companies that have different pace of innovations, at Uber we used to say growth at all costs. You have to understand what is the default pace of the company, and is that aligned with how fast you want to move, right? Okay. And to me, that becomes a big mismatch sometimes, where you spend about 2 or 3 months in a company and you realize that the company is too fast or too slow. So that's the first thing to look into, outside of doing your regular diligence on the business. You need to get a sense of the market opportunity. You need to get an understanding of the revenue, the competition, the market dynamics, and so forth.
Okay, wow, yeah, that's a great answer. Thank you. I'm going to ask a question about your roles again in the past, because there's a relation there. So one commonality we found was that in your last three roles, they were all in like the vertical SaaS space. Firstly, maybe for the audience, how would you go about describing what vertical SaaS is? And what is it that maybe the audience doesn't know about it that you want to share?
Yeah. So taking a step back, what is SaaS? So SaaS came up in the 1960s, and it's a business model where customers pay for software, right? So that's SaaS. What commonly people think about SaaS is horizontal SaaS. So a company like Salesforce that is solving CRM needs across many, many different types of industries. But over the last several years, what we're seeing is an increase in vertical SaaS. And vertical SaaS is companies that are solving the problems for a specific industry really well. So I'll give you an example of the driver app that I worked on at Uber. The driver app at that time, before I started working on it, it used to be a button that would allow drivers to just say accept or reject. But I was part of the team that set the vision for the next big version of driver app. And as we were working on it, our dream there was to tell the drivers where is the place to go to depending on our prediction of demand, our prediction on the time of the day or the day of the week. And that to me is a vertical solution. That's something that Google Maps cannot solve, right? Google Maps can tell you where it's busy, but it's but it won't tell you where drivers are going to be able to go to maximize their profitability. And the same sort of problems have translated in all the different types of companies I've worked in beauty and in travel as well.
So really kind of like zoning in and focusing on everything that benefits all the potential user personas, in terms of from like, even I think now with Peak, it's like everybody from the operators all the way to the people booking the experiences, right?
Yeah, and for travel, I'll give you an example of a very specific, a travel problem. So when you think about a bus and a bus tour, you would expect that an online booking solution would be able to let customers book a bus tour at any time, right? But where the vertical SaaS play comes in is you want to understand the dynamics that happen in the tours and activity company, in that bus operator. The bus operator needs to install guides, right? And you want to be able to drive profitability for that tour. What you don't want is a bus is running empty with just one person. So how do you set online booking cutoffs to be able to make every tour profitable? And that again is a vertical SaaS play, and something that any online booking solution that goes horizontally would not know about.
And what have you learned about building products in a vertical SaaS space from all your prior experiences? Like, what is like maybe like the one novel thing that you've really seen surface every time?
It goes back to customers, and it goes back to knowing your customers at a deep, deep level. So at every company that I've been, the best ideas, the best innovations have happened when me or my team have sat next to a customer and actually seen what they do on a day-to-day basis. And, it's not sufficient to read customer research notes where you can't outsource something like that. You really have to be in the shoes of your customers. So the way we do that is we do partner days where our entire engineering team gets to visit an operator. And during COVID, we haven't been able to do that, so we actually do a video conference where we get a whole tour of our operators and see how Peak is solving their problems. So that I would say is the commonality across all the vertical SaaS companies, that you have to go back, focus on the industry, but you have to spend time with your customers to be able to bring the industry forward through innovations.
When it comes to really focusing on the customers, as well as being a product leader, trying to show success to your team or to your leadership team, this is always a tough question, I think, I ask, because it's hard to navigate this response, and I always like asking it, so I'm going to ask you. So it is, how do you show ROI, like return on investment, as a product leader? Do you focus it towards customer-centric deliverables or results? how much of it is tied to maybe your own personal KPIs, your team's KPIs? Is it all unified towards one objective? What would you say to that as a product leader in your company?
Yeah. So to be able to make the right decisions that are demonstrating the maximum ROI, I always think ahead and say, if I'm preparing a look back next quarter, what do I have to show for myself and for my team, right? So always start there, and then it's with product, your KPIs could change. You could put any KPI every quarter and say, look, that's gone up, that's success, but it's not good enough to show graphs going up to the right if they're not tied to your company level goals, right? So it's important to start with the company goals. So when I create the product strategy, there are multiple things product can do. You can introduce delight, you can help with acquisition, you can help with retention, you could rebuild your tech stack, but all of that has to tie into company level goals. So that to me is how you demonstrate ROI. You have to start with the company goals and say, here is how we as a product team are making an impact there. The last thing I would say here is, a lot of times when product leaders are fighting for a particular initiative and saying this is the ROI, it's important in that conversation to not only talk about what you're doing and how that will impact the ROI, but also talk about trade-offs. And this is a big miss that people don't talk about. You have to say, I'm going to do this one thing, but here are the 10 things that I want to be doing, and driving clarity on why that one thing is more important than the others, and getting alignment on that is crucial.
Very interesting. No, I really like that trade-off component. Because obviously, if you're going to be doing something else, it's going to be compromising some other initiatives or product obligations. On that, how does your team, or how do you go about navigating through those tough decisions in terms of what you do? Like, where do you turn for advice? Where does your team turn to support? I guess it's obviously you, maybe, but like maybe any other kind of direction or guidelines that you give them?
Yeah. So customers, again, and understanding what you're doing and how you're impacting their lives. My team talks to as many people as possible. I always, whenever I talk to my company, I always say feedback is a gift, right? So I welcome feedback from the company, and my team, when they have a question, the first thing they would do is talk to customers and talk to those customer-facing teams. For me, myself, when I'm stuck, I take a pause, I go for a walk, and then I make a list of people who I can call. And I've been fortunate to have great mentors through my career. I reach out to them on a regular basis. My fellow CPO friends in different companies, they're the people who I pick up the phone and call, and then I utilize the entire executive product network to be able to get insights from my peers.
Oh, wow. Fascinating. Yeah, that's having a network to lean on, I think, is a gold mine of support. So that's fantastic. If you were to give yourself maybe advice that you know now to an earlier version of yourself, what would you say?
Yeah, so we talked about networking and the gold mine. So that would actually be the advice that I would give to myself. When I was very early on in my career, I would get, advice saying, hey, you should network more. And to me, it just didn't seem very natural. I would show up. I used to be in New York City. I would show up in New York City in those evening networking events. It just didn't feel right. And it felt like very uncomfortable, and it felt like the right thing to do because that's how you advance your career. And over time, what I've repositioned networking in my mind is not about showing up to look for what is there for yourself, but to actually say, how can I help others? Mm-hmm. And to me, that comes more naturally. And now when I think about networking, it's about how can I help other people? And the world's a small place, and any good that you do can be useful later on. And that's how I've been able to build my network over time and have a group of people that I can call because at some point I've helped them in the past.
Fantastic. I think that's great advice. networking is a lot of effort. I've been there, done that, but you never really know how it could help you longer term. So that's great advice. Thank you for sharing that. Just a couple more questions here, Navya. I wanted to talk more about, what does a CPO do? So, I think there's different people who think different reasons of what a CPO does, their responsibilities, their roles, but you've done it now a couple times. So, in your lens, in your perspective, what is the real role of a CPO?
Yeah. So a CPO is a C-level product executive that's responsible for making decisions at a company level, not just at the product or portfolio level. And that's what differentiates a VP from a CPO. As a CPO, you need to understand the end-to-end business. So when you're working with your peers in different departments, you need to understand what they do and how does that impact the overall company. So that full understanding of how different departments are working helps you make decisions at the company level and drive growth and profitability for the company and also your customers. Another thing that's really important as a CPO is to fully understand your shareholder metrics. What are you talking to your shareholders about? What are the market and the customer dynamics? What are the unique advantages that you can create as a product to drive growth and profitability of the company? And that, to me, those types of questions are what a CPO spends time on, whereas a VP is somebody who's always thinking about product and product success, not just the company level problems.
I see. So a VP in your eyes is somebody who's just more in it, like day to day, really focused on every output that comes out, whereas the CPO is like broader. It covers the whole business. Yeah. Is that what
you're making decisions at the company level, not just at the product level.
Perfect. Okay. With what you know now, is there anything in particular that you wish you learned earlier in your journey to becoming a more successful CPO?
Yeah, so, as product leaders, we're very cross-functional. We're always working with many different teams. We're speaking their languages, and I thought I could do that, And on my path to CPO, I learned that it's not just enough to speak the language of your stakeholders. It's very important to be able to step yourself out of product and say, why does that matter? When I'm talking to an investor, I could go on and on about how amazing our product is, but why does that matter to an investor? When I'm talking to our sales team or an operations team, you have to put yourself in their shoes and say, so what, right? And really stepping out of your product, your dream product world, and putting yourself in the shoes of the other teams and other shareholders, investors is a skill that I had to learn over time.
With that scale of being able to sell to like investors and shareholders and stakeholders in the company, how important is it for you to articulate or communicate like the product roadmap? Like, is that something that investors really care about, that you've seen, that they want to know where their business is going? And like, how do you really kind of portray that successfully?
Yeah, all the time, and when it comes to product roadmap, I'm the person who has to stand up and give that answer, a convincing answer. And I would say that over the years, I have, 6 or 7 different ways that I could represent the roadmap, and it continues to evolve. But really, the question that you have to answer before you start talking about the roadmap is the granularity that you want to get into, right? What's the story that you're trying to tell? A product roadmap is not a set of initiatives that you just want to bombard the person listening with, but you want to understand is what's the key message that you want to portray. And the key message is your product strategy, and the level of granularity that you get into really depends on the level of interest that the person has.
Okay. So modifying your kind of story depending on who you're talking to in a way. Awesome. Last question I have for you is, and you maybe touched upon it a bit earlier, but what do you look? How do you spot the next you? What do you look for in those candidates aside from the diversity part? And is there any specific personal traits that maybe you want to identify or that you look for when hiring?
Yeah, so it would be intellectual curiosity. I specifically look for people who are unhappy taking things the way they are, right? And if you give them a project, they'll leave it in a much better place, and they'll identify all the ways to make things better. That to me is an exceptional quality, and that sets people up for success. The examples that I've seen here are people who didn't even know that they wanted to do product, right? And I started to talk to them, and the way I identified those traits is they were unhappy with the way things were, and they wanted to just leave things better. So to me, intellectual curiosity and the passion to always find ways to make things better is the most important skill here.
Okay, awesome. I actually just did a recording recently with another person, and their background was in anthropology. Do you think that that's an important kind of factor for people who want to go into product should know, like the human psychology behaviors?
Yeah, I mean, that to me, product is technology and anthropology together, right? Mm-hmm. So you have to understand the people aspect, and you have to be able to understand your customers and the impact that your product is making, not just on their day-to-day, but in their lives in general. So I'm a big fan of recruiting people from that background.
Awesome. Okay, great. I think I got through all my questions I wanted to ask you today, Navya. Thank you so much. It was an absolute pleasure having you on our show, so I appreciate it. And for everybody listening, tune in next time to get more insights from other product innovation leaders in various industries.